Okay, Chair, we're live.
Diolch. Okay, good morning, everybody. Baradal Pab, Croeso. Welcome to Powers' Health and Care Scrutiny Committee. We've got one main item on our agenda today, which is to look at Powers' Corporate Safeguarding Board Activity Report. But before we get to that, we've just got to go through some other items. Have we got any apologies, please, Wyn?
Sorry, Chair. No, none received.
Okie doke. And then item number 2 is election of vice chair, and I understand we've got one nomination, Wyn?
That's correct. That's Councillor Gareth E. Jones.
And that's great, thanks for that. And have we got someone who'd like to second that nomination? Chris, I can see your hand up. You happy to second that?
I'm happy to second, yes, Chair.
Thank you. So Wyn, do we do a show of hands, or what did you say, sorry?
If you can just do a hands up in the participants box, please. See some hands on screen. That looks like a majority, Chair.
Great, so that is passed. Congratulations, Gareth. Thank you for putting your name forward to be vice chair.
Thank you, Chair. And I hope I can do the job properly this time.
I have found you very supportive and helpful. So yeah, and especially your role at picking up any recommendations and action points that we make as a committee, just so that we can then summarize them at the end of the committee. I think that's really helpful as well. Okay, so declarations of interest. Anyone got anything to declare in relation to the main agenda item? Disclosure of party whips. Anyone here a whip for their party?
That's anybody been whipped by the party?
Oh, is it?
On any particular item, okay. Chair.
Oh, I thought it was if you were a whip.
No, it means that if you've been whipped by your party to present a particular view in relation to scrutiny, then it means you actually can't take part in scrutiny.
Because we're not party political here, are we? We're cross-party.
No, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. No, none of that then. And then we've got 3 sets of minutes. I've approved these before. They go back to the beginning of the year, so I think they've got all of our budget stuff, haven't they, Wyn, in the first one?
Yes, they have.
Which me and Gareth looked at the time. Has anyone got any comments in relation to any of these 3 minutes? No. Can I have someone please to propose them?
Chair, can I just pick up a couple of the actions that are in these minutes, because it is a little while ago and there were certain actions that were mentioned. I'm going to page 5 first of all. There was an action regarding the Director of Corporate Services to consider the inclusion of rurality within that document. I just wondered whether that had happened or not.
Is that something from the last corporate safeguarding report, activity report? Am I looking at the right page?
It's on the top of page 5.
Hang on, I don't know if I've got the right page 5 in front of me. Which meeting are we on? 27th of January?
Yes, it's the first one, 27th of the 1st. And we had mentioned on there that there was I'd mentioned about rurality being mentioned, which when we were looking at the implications to some of the budgets, it's not always taken into consideration. And they then said they were going to take that away and consider whether it was included, and I just wanted to know whether that had been considered or not.
Is this to do with the corporate improvement plan? I'm just trying to, for some reason
it's on page 5 of the, if you look at the numbers on the on the
pack.
pages at the bottom of the pages, it's page 5.
But
if you look at the numbers at the top of the screen, it's page 3.
Oh, okay. I'm on page 3. That's why I'm confused. Yeah, I've got it. I think, Wyn, this is something that we need to go back to and look at our tracker to track these recommendations, because I'm not sure whether officers would be in a position to answer these kinds of questions today.
Yeah.
But that kind of action should have been put in our tracker, shouldn't it?
It should be there.
Yeah, I think we need a separate session on this, Chris, to pick up all of the actions.
Okay.
And what's happening with it. Because there's not just that one, there's quite a few that
there's a number of them I've highlighted. Yeah. I mean, one of my ones that is I've raised before was about the community information system, and it was said that there was going to be a variety of different options coming forward, and I've not seen anything to those.
Because this item is just to look at the accuracy of the minutes, can we push this to our reflective discussion at the end, Wyn, and can we have an update on the tracker and how we're then taking that forward in order to monitor the actions that we've made?
Yes, Chair, I can show you the tracker at the end.
That would be great. Thank you. Thanks, Chris. Has anyone got any other comments on the actual content of the minutes, whether or not we can approve them? No, in that case, can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Ben, I've got proposing. A seconder? Councillor Chris, thank you. So I'll just, for future reference, I think when I'm looking at the documents, would you prefer it if I went into the agenda pack rather than the actual individual document on each item? Because I think that's where I'm getting confused as to what the page numbers are. So I'll try and do that. Okay, right. So main item today is the Corporate Safeguarding Board activity report. Thank you very much for, we've got some officers. We've got Nina Davis. I think I've seen Sharon Powell. And have we got any other officers here?
No, I wouldn't have thought so, Chair. Thank you.
And also welcome to Cabinet members. We've got Councillor Sean Cox and Councillor Richard Church. Councillor Richard, are you leading on opening this?
Well, I'm happy to open it. I've really got nothing to say, so I'm just going to hand straight over to Nina to present the report.
Okay. Well, I'll go straight to Nina then.
Thank you, Chair.
Just because
Chair,
we have got...
Councillor Davies is here as well, I think.
Oh, sorry, Sandra, I didn't see you there. Welcome, Sandra.
Thank you. Thank you, Liz. Yes, no problem.
Sorry, everyone's so little, I can't, on my screen, I can't see who's here. Nina, just before you give an update on this one, just because we've got a couple of new councillors in this committee, are you able just to give a very, very brief sort of history as to where we're at with this and why we've got this before us today, please?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you, Chair. Good morning, committee. Lovely to be here and kind of give you this update on corporate safeguarding. As well as a bit of background for the newer members of the committee, Councillor Richard took on the portfolio responsibility of safeguarding when he took up his role in the Cabinet last summer. When I came into role as Interim Director of Social Services and Housing in July of last year, I also picked up corporate safeguarding as part of my new role. Very shortly after we took up those roles, I think it was within a couple of days, Audit Wales were undertaking an inspection and audit of the corporate safeguarding arrangements for Powys County Council. As we went through that process, it was very clear that there was strengthening and improvements to the corporate safeguarding work required. We didn't wait on the results of the audit report. We started that improvement work immediately, putting in place an action plan across the County Council in a wide range of areas. The Audit Wales report was received in December, I think it was mid to late December 2022, and the recommendations within that report, we'd already started actions against all of those recommendations, so we were able to very quickly report progress and actually complete some of the tasks and the recommendations that were within the audit report. Now, one of the recommendations is that we need to strengthen the kind of scrutiny and ensure that the corporate safeguarding group is carrying out its responsibilities. So you, as the Health and Care Scrutiny Committee, have a key role in making sure that the corporate safeguarding group are undertaking their duties and responsibilities, and part of that assurance and quality control work. So I hope that's a very brief kind of background to the corporate safeguarding work over the last 12 months. And as part of assisting you with your role, I come to your committee quarterly, and will be coming to your committee quarterly with an activity update for you. And I will talk through the kind of work of the board and what's happening across the council in terms of corporate safeguarding. So that's why I'm here today. Now, the report in front of you today follows the Corporate Safeguarding Board meeting that happened on the 16th of March. I appreciate that that's a few months ago now, and work has progressed since that date as well, which I know you'd want to hear about as well. A bit of a delay during because of Easter, and I've had a period of a little bit of leave. I think I missed a meeting, so that's why there's a bit of a delay before I'm with you today. This report, activity report, has also been to Cabinet, and it went to Cabinet on the 23rd of May, and will also be going to Governance and Audit, and I'll pick that up as part of this report as well. So the activity report in front of you summarises the information provided at that meeting. One of the key agenda items in March was an update on the safeguarding audit and action plan. So as a board, we went through the action plan, which we further developed following the recommendations of the Wales Audit Office Safeguarding Audit Report, as I said, which we received in December. So 5 additional actions were proposed and accepted for inclusion within the action plan. The action plan has now already been built into the regulatory tracker. Now that means it'll be reported on and kind of looked at as part of the quarterly performance meetings that all services have. And it also goes to the Governance and Audit Committee as well. So there's another layer of kind of assurance on the work as well. So if there are, for example, actions specific to a particular service, it will appear on their regulatory tracker and then come through their quarterly performance meetings as well. In terms of the action plan, at the meeting, excuse me, at the meeting in March, all of the actions were RAG rated as green, which means that they're on progress and on target. Two of the actions have already gone to blue. Now, blue means that they've been completed. The 2 actions that have been completed were to complete and improve a corporate safeguarding policy and a 1-page policy briefing and summary document. So that was completed last year. So that has now become a blue on the action plan. And the other completed action on the action plan, it was to review the need for having 2 DBS policies. One of the things the audit picked up on is that we had 2 DBS policies across the council. That action has been completed, the review has been completed, and the council now has 1 agreed DBS policy for the whole of the authority. So that action has been completed. All of the other actions, as I said, were green on the action plan. So good progress was being made against all of those. Feedback from Scrutiny and Cabinet was shared with the board. So anything that you discuss and raise during meetings with yourselves or with Cabinet, we feed back to the board. Make sure we've got that loop. I also fed back feedback from the Governance and Audit Committee. And that was also considered at the board. The board were also advised that Governance and Audit Committee were keen to have sight of the board's activity updates in the future. So as well as coming to yourself and to Cabinet, I'll be taking the same activity report to Governance and Audit Committee as well. And that is scheduled for, let me just scroll up, the 23rd of June. So that will be happening in a few weeks' time. Safeguarding self-assessments. So something that we, it's really important that all services undertake across the council is a self-assessment on the work that's happening in terms of corporate safeguarding. As we all know, safeguarding is everybody's business. It's not the domain of social services or schools, for example. It's everybody has a role and a responsibility. And so that's why every service across the council is asked to undertake a self-assessment. Now, rather than have a separate process, we've agreed and worked with corporate colleagues to include the safeguarding as part of the annual self-assessment process that services undertake. So at the time of the board meeting in March, service areas were in the process of completing that safeguarding audit. And they were also considered as part of the self-assessment panels in April and May, which go to Cabinet and EMT. So the information now is going to be integrated into the authority's overall self-assessment report, pending review by governance and audit, and then submission to Welsh Government. It's also going to be an agenda item on our next board meeting as well, which I think is next week or very soon as well. So the information and results from those self-audits, self-assessments will be looked at the next board. The audit looks at how robust policies and practices are, how safe the service environments are, and how safe the culture is. And we've asked heads of service as well to RAG rate each individual rating as well. So that's probably going to be one of the main agenda items, and probably a lot more detail will be coming to you in your next activity report update. The next item we looked at was safeguarding and contract management. The board was advised that there's a new robust 4-tiered approach to contract management framework in development, and that will be supported by workshops and training as well. The team are looking at work of other local authorities, etc. And this is going to be communicated to live contracts and be embedded into future tendering processes. And that planned rollout was from April 2023. Councillor Sean, I can see you, just good point, RAG rating. So if something is red, amber or green, so if we RAG something as a red, it means it's behind progress, not on track, it's significant risk if something's flagged as a red. If it's an amber, it's slightly behind or target or schedule or progress, etc. And if something's RAG rated as green, it means it's on target. So just to give you thank you, good question. Going back to the contract management, the new Commercial Performance and Risk Board will be monitoring the rollout of the new contract management approach, and performance is going to be captured on the commercial dashboard that is being developed as well to allow reporting, governance, scrutiny, and that's going to be as the Corporate Safeguarding Board, we're going to be having future reports on that as well moving forward. The next item discussed was around work around child performance and child employment. The board were informed that Welsh Government had reminded local authorities last year of their statutory duties in respect of this matter. And it's rooted in 90-year-old legislation, and it's about child performance licenses, child work permits and chaperone licenses. Really interesting discussion had at the board around this, and I think it was new to quite a lot of people. It was acknowledged there was a lack of knowledge and understanding across the authority, organisations, employers and the public in respect of the legislation and the legal requirements. And applications are often made very late, and processing time is dependent on the complexity. So between April and January, just as we had an update on how many performance licenses had been issued, and that was 19, with 10 body of persons approvals. So 40 employment permits.
Could you just explain, please, what is a performance license? What's an example of this in real life? I don't really understand what that would be, please.
Yeah, so it could be a child taking place in a theatre production or show or TV, etc. So yeah, no, it's a really good question. So thank you, Chair. But it was something that was new to a lot of us on the board. But it's about child performances, etc., or working permits, etc. there was a big discussion and there's a lot more work to do this across the authority. So we discussed next steps, including strengthening cross-departmental working, drafting a policy, and making sure that that cascade of information and understanding happens as well. So there will be future communications and social media, etc. about it. Going to link with community child performance groups, clarification of employment bylaws, and strengthen the chaperone process as well. So it was a kind of a first step and a kind of recognition that there was more work to do, and there's going to be future updates to the Corporate Safeguarding Board, and of course we'll include those in your future activity updates as well.
Nina, I could see that Councillor Gareth had his hand up before, but it's gone down.
Okay.
I was just going to ask whether, yeah, thank you, Chair. I was just going to ask whether things like the Young Farmers Clubs, when they do their annual entertainment events, you know, each federation has a week-long festival of entertainment. Would they then need a performance license, and is that one of the block ones that are given?
I know I've got Sharon Powell in the meeting here this morning. Sharon, do you know anything about it? If not, Councillor Gareth, I think that's one of the questions we can come back and answer in the future. I don't know the answer today. Apologies, but I'll just ask if Sharon's got any more idea. If not, I'll take that as a way as a. I know Young Farmers was something that was raised at the board.
Yeah, Borda, good morning, everybody. Yeah, really good question. And yes, it would mean that. So it's any groups of young people under the age of 18 that are performing for the general public in whatever circumstances. So Young Farmers absolutely meets that. They need to apply for this license in order to do so. So many Young Farmers clubs will do that already, but there is an element where we need to just raise awareness about what this all means as well. So that will be some of the next steps, but absolutely it would fit that.
Yeah.
And
I'm just
sorry.
thinking it's the Breckenshire Rally tomorrow. You know, they have their stars in, you know, you've got about 30 different competitions there, and you could almost put each one of those as some sort of performance if you took it in its widest sense.
Yeah, generally speaking, from my involvement in Young Farmers as a club leader, you'd kind of get those notifications quite early on, get consent from parents, and you'd put them into the official office at the start of any year when a person becomes a member. But it's definitely something we just need to ensure that is happening in terms of that wider population. So absolutely, yes. Generally, those sorts of organisations have been used to doing that because, as you said, of those kind of performance areas that they have to do. So this is about just making sure that we're casting that net wider across all groups and anywhere where there are young people. It also means children and young people that work. So I've put in the chat around, you know, it's very specific about the age of a child that can work, their terms and conditions, how long they can work for. So it's a multitude of things. It is new to some areas, and it was quite rightly kind of looked at within the Safeguarding Board, and from that there'll be lots of different next steps to kind of provide information across Powys really, so that everybody's aware of what it all actually means.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Gareth, for that question.
Thank you. A number of reports by exception were provided to the board. Young people's housing, the board were informed that there has been, there was at that time been seen a gradual reduction in homelessness being seen, and at that point there were no families in bed and breakfast accommodation as well. Elective home education, the board were updated that numbers of electively home educated children has increased to more than 300. This figure is partly due to some learners not returning to a school setting following the pandemic, and partly because some families are now registering as electively home educating as they are eligible for a resource grant if they do so. Numbers tend to alter throughout the year and tend to drop as we move into September, as well as some children and young people will leave school age, etc. The board were advised that Welsh Government will be issuing new guidance in the current financial year following a court case, and the new guidance, there'll be a subtle shift from it being Powys County Council's responsibility to ascertain whether suitable education in place, to it being the parent's duty to evidence it is in place. That's quite an important shift, and we'll be discussing that further in future board meetings as well once that guidance has been received. Mandatory safeguarding training. This is an area that the board keeps a careful eye on at every meeting. So mandatory safeguarding training has increased from 44.3% in last July to 81.1% at the time of the meeting. So very significant improvement there. More to do though, we'd still like it to be higher, and so we'll be keeping a careful eye on that. Compliance with VAUDA SV training, so if that's violence against women, training is improving, and we're ahead of our regional partners. So compliance with that was at 80% at the time the report was written for the board, and increased to 82% for the time of the meeting again. So a big improvement in that area as well in terms of safeguarding training.
Nina, can I ask a couple of questions on this point?
Of course you can, yes.
Yeah, this came up when we looked at it in March. So obviously numbers have gone up since then, and I think we had a couple of actions on this. So in relation to the corporate safeguarding training, well, probably both training actually, we'd asked about how you were going to roll out training to those staff that don't have everyday access to computers. And the action point was directed to provide an update on the training of staff in frontline services that do not have access to computers. So that's my first question, is whether or not you have that.
Apologies, I haven't something formal written down. You're right, we did raise it and discuss it, and what is happening, I believe, but I will get a full include it in the next report. Apologies, I've missed that off. Is that people are having group training sessions. So we're including it, and I think people can access it now on their personal kind of phones and devices, etc. as well. But apologies, Chair, I will double check on that and get a response to you.
That's okay. I think because this is now a rolling agenda item, and we'll probably, well, we might have actions again today. It would be good if for our tracker win as well, if we could make sure that those actions are picked up, so that the officers are actually reminded of what our actions were for when they bring the next report as well. The other one on this point, Nina, was someone in the last meeting asked whether the staff that have undertaken the mandatory training included school staff, and the action point was that the officer response was they're not included. All corporate training is undertaken separately in schools, including safeguarding training, which is at 100%. And I think we kind of wanted to see those figures included to make sure that it's a balanced across the board, because the action written down is the number of staff who have undertaken the mandatory safeguarding training should include school staff. And the second action was mandatory training should also be available to volunteers such as governors and all individuals who volunteer with schools and come into contact with children. I recall we had some discussion around sports clubs and volunteers at schools in relation to extracurricular clubs, and whether or not we could, I think Sharon, you commented on this as well, and whether or not we could look at maybe rolling that out on up to volunteers. Is that something that has been looked at, or is that still for the future?
I believe that was raised with the team, but I don't know whether it's been actioned as yet, Chair. So if it's all right, I'll take that as an action as well. So to get an update and to include, yes, you're right. So include the stats for schools as well, and to see how far that's gone, because I know there has been a discussion around the access for volunteers, etc., to the safeguarding training. So I will follow that up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Adult social care safeguarding performance. The board were informed there was no further update from Welsh Government at that point in respect of the shift from deprivation of liberty standards to liberty protection safeguards. Children's social services safeguarding performance. The board were informed that demand at the front door continues to increase, but child protection numbers have decreased due to intervention and support services. So really well done for the children's services team for that. There was a discussion around the type and location of the placements where the 13 asylum seeking children and young people are currently being looked after after and how this meets their needs. The board were informed that the number of asylum-seeking children and young people coming to POWIS or to be the responsibility of POWIS is likely to increase, and how this might be managed in terms of the closer to home policy. And it has to be obviously very much looking at the individual needs and placement availability for those children and young people as well. So a really important discussion around that. Future agenda items. So we got in one of the suggestions that has come forward is a safeguarding theme of the month. So that's going to be on our next agenda, is to look at whether we start that and what the plan and programme could be for those themes. Preparations for the annual National Safeguarding Week, which falls in November. We've got a report coming on annual private fostering. As I mentioned earlier, the service safeguarding self-assessment audits, etc., are going to be looked at in detail. Progress update regarding safeguarding and contract management, progress update regarding the child performance licenses and child employment permits, and feedback from National Safeguarding Week last year. Other business included housing service brought forward information about a damp and mould leaflet that has been created by the team. You know, at that time especially, there was quite a little bit of national media interest in terms of damp and mould in housing, and the housing officers had worked with the tenant scrutiny panel to put together the leaflet, and I've included it in the activity port for your information there as well. And also included is a young people safeguarding animation as well. It's a real short kind of video and clip, but I included the link to it as well. So just encourage people to have a quick watch of that as well. So future meetings, 8th of June, so next week, and then 15th of September, and then December, etc. So Chair, that was just a quick tour through the kind of main highlights from the last Corporate Safeguarding Board meeting. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Nina. Members, have you got any further questions for Nina or any of the officers or portfolio holders, please?
I have a couple. Yeah, sorry.
If you could put your hand up in the chat box, that would be great. And I can see Councillor Liz.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a question going back to the elective home education. And I know, you know, you've noted, Nina, the numbers have increased and that they may decrease. I just wondered if there's any information that we could have about the quality of that education and how it's, you know, how it's measured, because it's something I kind of no idea about really. I know very little about home education. And I wondered whether there's any information about the age range of the children that come into home education. You know, it'd be helpful to sort of understand whether they're young children and what their needs are, whether they're older children. And also whether or not children tend to come in and out of it. You know, so do you find that children, you know, maybe home educated for a while and then come back into the, you know, the public school system? You know, because I'd be interested to know whether or not that in itself creates any issues or benefits, for example.
Okay, I won't be able to answer all of those today, Councillor Liz, apologies.
No,
and I don't think there's nobody from educational schools on the call this morning. I think in terms of, you know, the quality measured, you know, that's a really important question, isn't it? This new guidance that is going to be coming out, you know, is going to be putting the responsibility on parents to evidence the quality of the education that is going to be provided. So we, at future safeguarding boards, we are going to be, you know, having an update on that, and then how that will be then evidenced and monitored, etc., moving forward. So hopefully the detail around that moving forward will come through future activity reports update for you. But, you know, if you'd like me to bring along probably the officer who leads on this area to a future scrutiny meeting. I'm more than happy to do so you could discuss it in more detail. Maybe it would be a good idea after the new guidance has come out, because that would be, we've had a chance to kind of reflect on it. That would be a good opportunity to come to you with that kind of officer and have a real detailed discussion on it. So I think that's a real timely question, actually, and something that we'll be picking up. I don't know the date of when the guidance is going to be issued, but I'll have an update on it next week anyway for you. Sharon's just put her hand up. Sharon, was that in response to that?
Yes, can I just come in on that? That's okay. I mean, I think that's a really good question that's just been asked. And there are lots of changes in terms of the roles and responsibility of education services in tracking electively home educated children. Welsh Government are particularly interested in this kind of narrative around it in terms of numbers, roles and responsibilities. And within safeguarding as a whole, we have a Powys local operational group which feeds into the regional safeguarding group. So that gets discussed. Electively home educated children will invariably get discussed within that group, and then information gets fed into the regional safeguarding board, because also they're very keen on numbers. How many? Is there a change in trend? What are the implications for that? Because unfortunately there have been some incidents within the region where children have suffered trauma as a result of being electively home educated. So it is an area that is scrutinized. So I think it absolutely should come to here for further conversations. Lynette isn't here today, like Nina said, but I'm sure she would welcome bringing something to you to look at that in more detail.
Thank you for that. That's really interesting, and I think it is worth. Please, Gareth, could you note this as an action point from today? Because I would
already
like
done,
to
Chair.
put it. That's great, thank you. I just wanted to add, all of this. I think this needs to start with us being fed the information from an information gathering exercise point of view, rather than us coming in. Oh, we need to scrutinise because children who are being home educated may not be safe. I think that's not the norm, and obviously there have been a very small number of horrific incidents, but we want to be looking at this in a balanced way, because there's a lot of children who it suits their needs to be home educated, and we've got to make sure that we get the tone of this right. I just wanted to also add on to what Liz mentioned about the numbers, is also looking at the themes of children who are being home educated, and whether or not there's any themes which need further exploring, such as children with specific additional needs, and whether or not they are going into home education because their parents feel that their needs aren't being addressed at school, and whether or not there's any themes there. I'm not saying that that's the case, but I just want to, it's not just about numbers, is it? It's about the reasons behind why those children may or may not be being home educated. So if we could just add that onto it as well. And that's a really great point. So thank you for raising that, Councillor Liz. Councillor Chris.
Thank you, Chair. I've got two questions, but first of all, just to say, I can see that there's been a significant amount of work that's been done, and congratulations to the team for doing what they've done. I think it gives a positive picture coming across of the activities since we've last met, so that's good. I'm just coming back to the 2.4 on the report with the safeguarding within contract management. You mentioned about a new robust 4-tier process being developed. What's the timeline for that development? And also, is that something that we are doing as an organisation, or is that being done centrally through Welsh Assembly, or via an external route? And then I'll come on to the report under 2.6, the mandatory safeguarding training. I note that this is an improvement in relation to where it was in July 22. My recollection from the last time we had these figures, it was around about 78%. So realistically, this has only just shifted up a little bit if I've got those figures right. But my question is what's the timeline that we have within the policy for service areas to actually get members of their teams through this training? Because to me, there seems to be, looking at the figures, a hardcore of individuals that haven't done it, and how long do we give them to complete it? Because that figure should be much higher, because it's protecting the organisation and those people that are vulnerable, and that's what I'd like to see improve on. But well done for what you've done so far. I think it's positive.
Oh, thank you, Councillor Chris. I really appreciate that, and I'll feed that back. In terms, I'll take those in reverse order if that's okay. In terms of the safeguarding training, you're right, it's not a huge improvement since I think the last time I came to see you, which was very early in the year, wasn't it? I think you're right, it was around the 78%, but it's going in the right direction, which is positive. And I think I checked figures a few weeks ago when they were up again. So, you know, we're continuing to improve. In terms of timelines to get the training done, I don't think there is one. I think it's one of those jobs that staff are expected to do when they start. You know, I know it's when I have new people starting, it's one of those jobs that we kind of sit them down on the first day and right, here's all your mandatory training, we need to get this done, etc. So I don't believe, as far as I'm aware, that there is actually a kind of grace period or anything after you start a role to undertake the mandatory training. I think it's something that's got to be done straight away. It's a really good question around whether this is a hardcore of people who've never done it or whether it's new starters, but it also does include people who are on maternity leave, who are on sick leave, away from work, etc. So that's why, you know, you're not going to get the 100%. There's always going to be some people who are away from work for a myriad of reasons that, you know, perhaps fall out of compliance. But as a head of service, you get reports on whose compliance with mandatory training has lapsed, etc. And you also know when it's lapsed and how long it's out of date and if they've never done it, etc. So that would be for heads of services and managers to be kind of managing that process and ensuring that you don't have a core of people who've never done it, etc. And ultimately things do get escalated. You know, if people are resistant, then you will see it gets escalated and picked up. And you know, and I have on occasions got involved and contacted staff directly to, you know, get them and ask them and make sure that they complete their mandatory training. So does that answer that safeguarding training for you, Councillor Chris?
Yes, I mean, I assumed those things were in place, but you can never assume.
No, you're
so
right.
It's about asking the question.
Absolutely.
And on there, and I mean, as long as that is in hand on there. But as I say, from my recollection, the percentage increase was small. But as you've just indicated, that's an improvement. So it's just what we can do to help some of those services to improve and move that forward.
Yeah, and as the chair rightly kind of reminded me earlier, isn't it? It's to bring back to you as well the detail on how we're trying to reach those hard to reach members of staff, because we have huge numbers of staff working for the council who don't work on IT, who don't have access to laptops, etc. So it's really important how we reach those people as well to help them to undertake the mandatory training that they need to as well. Now, your first question was about the contract management, wasn't it? Right, it's work that we're doing internally with Powys County Council, but obviously making sure it's within all of the wider guidance legislation as appropriate, etc. So it's in accordance with Compass safeguarding guidelines. And I think the deadline for that work to be completed was April. So we will be having it's one of the items of discussion at our next board meeting next week, Councillor Chris. So perhaps if this is an area of interest, which I think it absolutely should be for you with Scrutiny, it's really good that you're asking a question about it. Perhaps we could ask Wayne Wellesby, who's the commercial services lead, to attend next Scrutiny as well. So you could have a bit more of an in-depth discussion on that. Would that be appropriate, Chair? Obviously, up to you. But
yeah, no, I think that would be good for us to find out more, but obviously we don't want to take up a disproportionate amount of time, so probably for him to just give an overview in 5 minutes and an update on where things are, that would be great if that could be picked up as an action point as well, please, Gareth.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Chris. Councillor Gareth, I think you've got some questions as well. Councillor Gareth, can't see you now. Is Councillor Gareth? He's gone, but he did have his hand up. When has he left the meeting? Maybe he's lost.
Yes, Chair. It looks as if he's.
I think people have been kicked out, Chair, from time to time. I know that Councillor Sean lost the meeting. It is possible that that's happened.
Okay, I will.
He did have a number of issues he raised at the pre-meeting. One of the ones he wanted to ask was around the additional actions which have been agreed by the board. And he was going to ask the director what those actions were and what was agreed.
Thank you, Wyn. I can't recall off the top of my head, but that's a really good question. And actually, one of my reflections as we've gone through this meeting is that I should have included the action plan for you to look at. So I apologise, and I'll take that away as an action to include, so you can kind of, as a scrutiny committee, have a real in-depth look, and then I can also flag then when we put new actions on as well, and when things are completed as well. So I can't recall off the top of my head now. I'd have to go back and look through my notes. Apologies, Chair, but I'm happy to come back and confirm that to you.
That's okay. Wyn, can you see whether he's online? Let me just see whether I can see.
I could try and bring him back in again. Let me see what else he had.
It looks like
he had a couple of other comments as well. One was about contractors again and the rules, what rules have been set for contractors.
Yeah, just to confirm, the reason I can't easily pick out the 5 new ones is because I've got the regulatory tracker open in front of me, but because we've put all of the regulatory tracker actions on, all the actions onto the tracker, they're all showing as new to me, so I can't. So that's why I apologies for not knowing immediately which the 5 new ones.
Okay, and the Councillor Gareth's question on contract management possibly will be picked up at the next one then when we. Did he have any others, Wyn?
The other part on contracts was the monitoring, the process overview, and then the monitoring of that bit.
I think
and there was a question
Chair,
about
I think that was my question in the pre-meeting about the contract management. And
beg your pardon, sorry, Liz.
Honest, I think that Nina answered it reasonably well in terms of the 4 points that were being taken forward. So thank you, Nina.
And he did have a question about the child performance and child appointments. What action are we taking? Well, obviously, some of that's been covered already with that. I think that was it. I was literally just find him and see
what we'll do is if he's got further questions, we can perhaps put them in writing to you, Nina, and then
absolutely, yeah,
be picked up. Because I don't know whether maybe he's got IT problems. Okay, any other questions from members? No, I can't see any. So on that note, thank you all for coming and presenting. Oh no, I did have a question. Sorry, I just realised I've not read my own notes. Very quick question on the themes of the month, and I realise this is quite in early days. And this is something that did this come out of our previous meeting where we made the suggestion? And I know that Sharon Powell emailed me about one of those themes being to do with safe internet use training, and that could be a theme. And I just wanted to ask about how you're envisaging communicating themes of the month, because I know that historically things go up on Facebook and that's great, but how are you hoping to cast the net as wide as you can, and also in a timely way? Because I think I noticed and pointed out to you, Sharon, that one of the trainings that was offered to do with safer internet use, then that it was sort of advertised just a couple of days before it was about to take place, or even just the day before. So it's how do we have a for any training that's going to be communicated through these themes of the month, how do we make sure we've got a really good time frame, and it's not just a tick box exercise, and we're actually giving the right people the right notice so that they can join and take part in these kind of things.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's a really important point. And I think that's why we wanted to have an agenda item specifically on the themes of the month and try and get a 12-month programme so that we have got a planned, so we are thinking a couple of months advance, because, it's a really important point, as you say, that we get the time in and the notice and the planning right. And if there is going to be training for any of the potential themes, etc., then you're right, people need the notice, don't they, to kind of be able to attend that. In terms of how we communicate the themes, that was something that we're going to be discussing at the board as well, so we haven't had that discussion as well. So if you as a committee have any suggestions, really pleased to hear them. I mean, it will be the normal, as you suggest, the social media, the press releases, the communications, the emails, etc. But I think it'd be nice to think a bit differently and perhaps use, the forums that we have in place. We have some great kind of, tenant scrutiny panel, young people's junior Startwell. We've got all of these really good forums where we can talk to people and interact with people, and I think we do need to be a bit more creative and think wider than just Facebook and just emails and just communication. So I think that's a really good challenge and something I'll take back to the board when we discuss it as well.
I would also suggest you go through schools and the governors, and also maybe community council clerks as well, because a lot of community councils feed into a local newsletter, and sometimes they might share information. I would suggest if you've got a programme in advance, it's how councillors get shared, all sorts of things, so that we can share it as well, and put it in. We all have different ways of communicating with our residents, but I know that some of us communicate through physical newsletters that go out, so that if we've got it, then it's for us to think about that as well, and maybe also the leisure centres and whether or not they can put things on notice boards as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Councillor Gareth, you're back. Oh, you're on mute though.
I am. Apologies. I'm not sure what happened.
No, that's okay. We Wynne tried to cover off some of your questions because I think you'd mentioned them in the pre-meeting. When you asked about the contractor management question, what were your questions going to be, Gareth? Was the stuff that's still
I was just going to ask Nina on the first part, what were the 5 additional actions that are agreed by the board?
Yeah, that Wynne has asked that, and
okay,
Nina,
fine.
do you just want to cover off what you said again?
Councillor Gareth, one of the things I've reflected on as we've gone through is that I need to provide the action plan for you as part of my activity update, so I'll include that moving forward. I don't have the detail of the 5 new ones and I can't recall them off the top of my head. I apologise. I've got the regulatory tracker in front of me, but because they've all been put on since the meeting, they're all shown to me as new, so I apologise I can't answer that question, but I'll take that forward. Thank you.
The second question I had around the self-assessments is what process does the council have in place to do any peer assessment of the individual services self-assessments? So does
Yeah, there's self-assessment panels that take place.
okay.
So each head of service and quite often senior team within a service attend a panel with cabinet and with members of EMT, which is executive management team, and are questioned and queried and challenged on the responses within the self-assessment. So that's kind of where the peer review happens as well from executive management team and cabinet. So that's the process.
Fine, thank you.
Brilliant, thank you.
Thanks, Gareth. I think that's it then from questions on this, unless anyone's got any final thoughts. No. Okay, so the only other agenda item is the work programme. I just wondered, Nina and Sharon, whether you could just stay on for this, just so that we can have an update on some of the things that have slipped from previous work programmes, just so we can make sure that we can slot them in as and when we're able to. When are you able to share the work programme on the screen?
Yes, Chair, bear with me for a second. Hopefully should be coming up shortly.
Okay, thank you. So in the next meeting, we've got 2 items which are on the annual sort of work programme agenda, which is the complaints report and the Director of Social Services. Nina, how long do you envisage those will take on the work programme? Because then we've also got 3 other items, 2 of which have been put on here because they weren't ready to be presented previously. And I'm just a bit conscious that this meeting is now going to be quite heavy, but I don't want those previous 2 items to be lost.
The other question I've asked, Chair, as well, sorry, Nina, the other question I've asked Nina as well is in relation to the adult subject, because the new head of service only started at the beginning of July. Is it fair to throw her straight into this at the very beginning? Can somebody else do it, or should we be delaying that? So I've asked that question. Sorry to interrupt.
No problem at all. Thank you, Wyn. Thank you, Chair. That's quite a chunky agenda, isn't it, really, for one day? The annual complaints report, I've seen that's ready to come to you. I'd have thought that's probably a 30-minute kind of presentation and discussion. Annual report of the Director of Social Services, I mean, that's a 50-page document. And I think that's a really key, important document, isn't it, probably, to come to you?
But it's just for us to know.
But it's for information, yeah, I suppose so.
So I would be happy for that to be given to us virtually. Okay. That's not the right word, is it?
Electronic,
so on Teams, for us to read it in our own leisure by that meeting, for members to put any sort of, I would say, anything they think needs reflecting, rather than what about this, you know, clarification type questions I don't think are appropriate for that kind of report, because it's not something, it's not a new policy that we're scrutinising, for example, or seeing where you're at. So I would like that to be done over Teams remotely, if that's okay.
Happy to, whichever way suits you. I think, Sharon, you're ready, aren't you, for the next item then on the residential placements costs and strategy? Is that right, Sharon?
Yeah, that's right. And that would probably be about half an hour, Chair, if that suits, but I could shorten it if that's helpful.
No, that's fine. So half an hour of you presenting, and then we probably, I'm just trying to think, sometimes members might have quite a lot of questions on that. So we might that might end up being okay, half an hour to 45 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I can update you on is that the new head of adult social care, Sharon Fruin, is starting on the 3rd of July.
Okay.
So a meeting on the 7th July, she's not, you know, she wouldn't be able to come forward and deliver that. Obviously, other you know, other officers could come forward if you wanted that agenda item on extra care at that time.
I think it would be good to get an update and a briefing on that at that time. I know we haven't done a questionnaire to service users yet, because I think maybe things aren't, you know, moved far along enough to do that. And then to have a fuller thing for the autumn. because just there's some of us who've got Councillor Gareth and I and Councillor Ben, we went to look round the extra care site in Welshpool last week, and I think it would be good to just have a short briefing rather than a full report. Would you agree with that, Councillor Gareth?
I would, yes.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's no problem at all. And then a presentation from Llais. So this will be, you'll probably be aware that there's been a move from community health councils, and the remit has been extended to include social care with a new name, which is Llais. And so they're going to have a role moving forward with social care, not just health. And this is Katie Blackburn, who's the Regional Director for Llais for Powys, to come along to yourselves and introduce herself, what Llais is, etc., and how we could look to work together moving forward, etc. So I think that's a quite an important one.
Okay, well that sounds fine. We've got 2.5 hours. Do you know how long her presentation would be? Sort of half an hour?
I'd have thought so, yes.
So as long as we get to her by 12 o'clock, that would be, I think that will work. And then the chunkiest bit of this, I think, will be the residential placements item. So that sounds manageable. But then what I was wanting to ask is, obviously we haven't had the Q4 performance, and by the time we get to this, if we don't have time to put it on here, which we don't, where is that going to slip to? And is that going to slip to where we should actually be looking at quarter one?
We're actually changing the regime as well, Chair, as I understand it. Now, I think in future, what committees will be looking at is Q1 and Q3 reports rather than 2 and 4. As part of that, and obviously, we've got also, you'll be looking at the 3 objectives for the corporate improvement plan, because I think and all committees will be looking at the 3 objectives, because I think it's good to get an overview from different perspectives of each of the committees on the 3 objectives, because they are so wide reaching, and then feed that back to the cabinet.
I think Councillor Gareth and I have said previously that at the very least we absolutely want every quarter put in our Teams room so that we can have a look. Councillor Gareth, did you want to comment on this?
Well, that was the point I was going to make, Chair. Perhaps Q4 could be put in the Teams room so we can look at that outside, and perhaps we then need to start the regime from Q1, perhaps in September meeting.
So
I've got them so far. I think children's are up to date. Can't remember where we are with that. So I put some up there recently on the Teams site. So please go and have a look.
Nina, will Q1 be ready in September?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so can we put Q1 performance and risk in our September meeting then?
Yep, no problem at all.
Yeah.
Exactly. Thanks, Wyn. Edwin, did you want to ask a question on this?
Yeah, just thank you, Chair. Just briefly showing your presentation from Llais. After being quite involved with the CLH, but everything seems to have gone quiet and gone to ground. Where exactly are we standing with Llais at the moment then? Are they getting ready to start back up, or?
Yeah,
I haven't spoken to Katie for a while, and I just thought I'd take this opportunity now, being as you were there.
Just remind Edwin that we're still on a live meeting, so I would only expect Nina to be able to answer anything that she could do.
No, I appreciate that.
In her knowledge, given that we have
appreciate that.
Okay.
Yeah, no, Llais came into being on 1st of April of this year. So and I think that's one of the reasons, Katie, it'd be really good if she came along to the meeting here and to talk to you all about, the new extended remit of Llais moving forward, etc. I think that'd be a really useful presentation and update and discussion.
Thank you. The only other thing then, Nina, is where we're envisaging we can stick the health board coming to scrutiny, because I think this needs a full meeting on its own. I would be happy to put in another meeting in the diary, given that we've got obviously one in July. August is never a good month, but then we don't have one until the end of September. Do you think we could look to have one earlier in September with the health board?
Yeah, I don't see why not at all. The interim chief exec, Hayley Thomas, was very keen to come along, so I'm sure we can work with her to get a date, and we could look at early September. That sounds really good.
Okay, I'm just trying to. I know we'll have to have a look at diaries, won't we? But from memory, that I think children go back to school on around about the 4th of September. So maybe that 7th or 8th of September. That would be.
I'll note that, Chair.
Yeah, and if Nina, are we able to put those? Is it you who's in conversation with her then to see what dates she can do?
Win and I, yes, we can liaise to do that. Yeah.
So 7th or 8th is what I'm going to just provisionally propose, if that's okay, just to get the ball rolling.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, and I think that's it. Unless anyone else has got anything on the agenda, on the work programme. I don't want to keep officers and cabinet members too long.
I think on that, Chair, we probably need you, myself, Vice Chair, the directors and heads of service need a conversation outside the meeting just to have a look at populating the work programme further forward. And I think another piece of work we need to do as well, Chair, between you, me and the Vice Chair, is to look at scoring the things we've got on the back catalogue, basically, to see what we can prioritise and bring forward, just so we can roll this a bit further forward, because I think towards the end of the year it's getting a little sparse here, and I'd like to actually beef this up.
Okay, I think, Sharon, we've got to catch up next week, haven't we? So from a children's perspective, we'll be able to have a think about things then. And perhaps when how long have we got you for? Would at the end of next week or the following week work?
You've got me for 2 months, Chair, so
great. Okay, so we'll liaise offline then to get a date between us to populate that. And on that note, I know we've got a committee reflection which we'll do off web view in a second, but I just wanted to thank officers and portfolio holders for coming today and presenting. I was actually and I'm quite happy to say this, but I was actually really skeptical about us taking on the corporate safeguarding as under our umbrella. Not that I didn't think it should be done and scrutinised, because I think it absolutely should, but I because it reaches across the council and not just social services, I wanted to make sure it was in the right forum, and I was quite skeptical about it being under our committee. But on reflection and seeing how the types of questions we're asking as a committee, I think it's good for it to stay with us. And so yeah, I've reflected and I've learned. So thank you all, and have a good rest of the day. If committee members please could just stay online, just so we could have a quick reflection. There's a couple of points I want to say, and I just want to discuss the action tracker.
Okay, Chair, if you bear with me, I'll stop the recording and then I'll invite the members of the public to leave.
Diolch, Chair. Diolch pawb.